Hello and welcome to episode 27 of Think Big with Michael Zellner. All positive, no politics. My guest today is Rob Fischer. Rob is the Grizzlies sideline reporter, and he's also host of Grizzlies Live pregame and postgame show, along with Chris Vernon and Brevin Knight. And he also has his own podcast called Infield Fly Podcast, and he is the co-host along with Lang Whitaker and Keith Murphy. Rob, welcome to the show.
Hey, Michael, good to talk to you, man. How are you?
I'm doing great. I appreciate you coming on today.
You got it.
Tell us something interesting about yourself most people don't know.
I'm scared of talking in front of people.
Wow.
I mean, to go the last, 30 years of talking for a living and talking on the radio and talking on television, I'm scared to talk in front of people. It's very, and people ask me all the time, how is that possible? Because you do it every day, but you really don't. I mean, in radio, you're talking with a friend in the studio and you're talking into a microphone.
Right.
On television, I feel like I'm talking to a camera, and talking to people watching, but no one that's like right there in front of me. But when I have to stand in front of a crowd to speak, and I've tried to do more of it over the last few years, to try and practice it more, I guess. But I'm terrified. I'm terrified. I'm nervous. I start sweating a little bit, and I feel like I don't know what I'm going to say. And then every time, though, when it's over, I feel like it went okay. So right. I'm trying to overcome that fear. But yeah, that's an odd fear that I have, is talking in front of people.
I mean, it's the biggest fear in the world, the fear of public speaking. So I mean,
yeah.
But you're right. You would not think about that being something that you would have wrong, that you
right.
would feel that way at all. But interesting. That's a great, I would have never known that. You know, your career started in the early 90s in your hometown of St. Louis. I think you were hosting a daily talk show there. And then you also hosted, a pre and post game show for the St. Louis Rams back then, also
yes.
in that time. And in 95, you moved to Vegas and you hosted a 6-hour call-in show on the Nationally Sports Radio Network there. And then, hosting a weekly hockey program with current NHL broadcaster Phil Esposito, who broadcasts for the Tampa Bay Lightning, and he's a Hall of Famer.
Yeah.
You had a lot of success at such a very young age. How were you able to attribute that and how to handle that?
It was right spot at the right time. I mean, it was, I played baseball at St. Louis University, and sports radio had just started in the country. I think at the time there were 9 sports radio stations in the country, and St. Louis had just started one. And I was hurt on the baseball team, and one of the guys from the radio station used to come out and work out with us. And since I was the guy that was hurt, I was the one that got to, warm him up and play catch. And we became good friends. And I was going into school to try and go into sports broadcasting. And they had just started the radio station. They needed interns. I became an intern. Within 3 months, I was hired as a producer. I started doing a show at midnight every night. Me and 2 other guys from midnight to 2 a.m. every night, because they just threw us a bone and gave us an opportunity to be on the air. And then just more opportunities. I tried to see, I tell people this all the time who want to get in the business. I tried to seize every opportunity I possibly could have, whether it was producing, whether it was being out on location, whether it was filling in for a show, whatever I could do, I did. So to make me more valuable, I could be a guy that could do anything. And that's kind of been my mantra throughout my career, has just been, always be prepared very well and always be able to do a lot. And I think it helped me a long way. I mean, just last year, 30 years now in this business, I had a week last year where, I do sidelines and pre and post game for the Grizzlies television. And on one game, I did my job, the pre and post and sidelines. And then because of COVID situations, I did 2 games of radio play-by-play, came back to do another sideline game. Then I did television color, and then I did television play-by-play, all in a 2-week span. And it was one of the highlights of my career, being able to do all those things. But it just really went back to the beginning of, doing as much as I can, being prepared for whatever I need to do, and always being willing to help and to get those opportunities. Those were dreams coming true. It was a special year last year being able to do those things, but it was the right time, and I was in the right place, and I started doing so much that I even quit school because I didn't have time for school.
Right.
And at the age of 19, I was doing play-by-play for a professional roller hockey team that they had in St. Louis, the St. Louis Vipers. I did play-by-play for an indoor soccer team, the St. Louis Ambush. So I was already, at 19 traveling with teams and doing that type of work. And it was a blast. And then I got the opportunity in Vegas, and that was a great experience of, working 6 hours a night and needing to be prepared for a 6-hour show. And I got to work with great people. I worked with P. Rose, who was fascinating to work with. And you mentioned Phil Esposito. I was our hockey insider for a national sports network. I was our hockey insider.
At your age? Wow.
At the age of 25. And, so that was a big deal. And to work with Phil Esposito was a true treat. It was an honor and such a pleasure to work with the guy of that stature, one of the top 5 all-time players in the history of the sport. So that was a lot of fun, and worked with Sean Salisbury and Merrill Hodge and Tim Ryan, and just to name a few. Jay Glazer, worked with him, and there were so many guys that came up when there were only a few networks. This is before ESPN radio.
Right.
It was SEN and the Sports Entertainment Network, and then there was Sports Fan Radio Network where I worked, and those were the only 2 networks really that you could get. And now so much has changed, and it's incredible. But my journey along the way, it was every stop that I've been has been a great experience to get me to where I'm at today. And Vegas, I'd love to live in there. I would have lived there the rest of my life if the job was better. I'm glad I didn't, considering that network no longer exists.
Right.
But it was an amazing experience for me as a young man to have that sort of, be thrust into doing a national show for 6 hours and have to prepare for it. You prepare for 8 and you use 6. And I've kept that with me throughout my career of over preparing. And I know I over prepare, but a good friend of mine once told me, fail to prepare, prepare to fail. And I've always kind of lived by that.
Yeah, I think I remember back in the mid 90s, the only radio show that was like big, I think late at night, listen to Arnie Spaniard.
Yeah, he was on SEN. Yeah. And we had JT the Brick, who ended up coming along a little bit later after the Jim Rome show, after he got fame on the Jim Rome show, winning the Smack Off one time. And he did our overnight show. We had a guy named The Dog, who just came out and howled like a dog and did the overnight show. We had the fabulous Sports Pig. She was on the show. So, yeah, I worked with a lot of interesting characters over the years who really, I mean, when you come down to it and you think of sports radio across the country, really were pioneers. A lot of those people were pioneers in the industry. And I was lucky enough to work with a lot of them on their way up.
After you left Vegas in early 97, you moved back to St. Louis and you hosted a sports talk show there, I think for about 5.5 years. And then in September of 2002, you came to Memphis, to host your own show on Sports 56 WHBQ. How did that opportunity come about for you?
I had I had explored a lot of things in St. Louis. I had done a lot of things in St. Louis, and I'm proud of everything that I did in St. Louis. It got to a point where I felt like I was kind of stuck. It's amazing, even 20 years later now, and you look at radio in St. Louis, and there's still some of the same names from when I worked there. And I was kind of stuck where I was, kind of being the young guy that wasn't going to be able to sneak in with all these veterans of sports radio in St. Louis. And Dave Green, who had worked in St. Louis, got a job in Memphis as the GM of Sports 56. And I guess it was about 6 months later, he called and asked if I'd be interested. And I jumped at the opportunity. And again, I've been lucky that every time I've jumped at an opportunity, it's been the right call, and it's turned out to be the right decision. And that was the right decision, again, was coming to Memphis. And I felt a couple of things. One, I was going to get to host an afternoon show in drive time. 2, it would be a great start, not a start over, but kind of a start of settling down in one place for the rest of my career. And I thought there'd be a better opportunity to do television, which was something I was very interested in. And I knew some people with the Grizzlies and thought maybe an opportunity could come there along the way. And lo and behold, about 5 years after I had moved to Memphis, that opportunity came up. And I've been with the Grizzlies now doing television for 15 years and gave up radio a few years ago, still do a few podcasts to kind of give me that taste of talk radio. And so that's still a lot of fun, but television's kind of become my number one job. And it happened because I came here to Memphis. So, the progression of my career, it's every step along the way has been another progression. And Memphis was just another progression and hopefully a progression to the end.
One of the all-time great NBA players, Bill Russell, just recently passed away. And he said, quote, "Success is a result of consistent practice of winning skills and actions. There's nothing miraculous about the process. There's no luck involved." And you tweeted that out recently. What does that quote mean to you?
Well, I think it's Draymond Green talks about it all the time. When he talked about it after the NBA Finals, it's about the journey, and it's not. He was asked to compare championships, and he said you don't really look at the championships. What you look at is the journey, and that's what makes it special. And I agree with that. And I think it's about. There are so many things that go into being a champion or being successful. And it's about working hard every day. It's about putting all of your time and all of your available time into your craft and trying to perfect it and never being satisfied and always trying to be better. And, I think that, that the road to get there, you have to appreciate and you have to believe in it and you have to, you have to fail along the way. I saw a sign today. It said success is based on failure upon failure. And it is. I mean, you fail along the way as well, or you get fired along the way, but you just keep bouncing back and you keep fighting. And, it's about fighting. It's about being a good teammate. And all of the things that Bill Russell encapsulated, being a great teammate, being a champion, having that heart, having that desire, having that will, but then putting team always first above yourself. I mean, that's something that always, is important to me, whether it's telling my kids when they're playing sports or, seeing the Grizzlies go out and make a move for someone. It's about getting guys who put team first. And I think Bill Russell, anytime you heard him spoke, it was never about, well, I went out there and I dominated and I was just better than everybody else. It was a matter of, he even said it, they had the quote last week after he passed about, how were they able to have sustained success for so long? And he said, because we truly loved each other. And that's something that people just don't realize, what continuity can do, what having a team that really likes each other, what it can do. I mean, it gives you a different power. And I think we saw it with the Grizzlies last year. A team that really likes each other can succeed and they can do things together that aren't thought possible because they truly do it as one unit. And, all of those things that you hear, it's one of 13 guys, or it takes everybody, or, we want to, all the cliches that you hear, those are true. Those are real and they truly have meaning. And I think we saw with the Grizzlies, we saw it for 2 decades with the San Antonio Spurs. And we saw it for a long run with the Boston Celtics that Bill Russell was a part of.
I saw actually a video clip just yesterday on YouTube. Bill Russell was talking to Kobe. This is when Kobe was playing. And Bill Russell didn't know he was on camera. And he was just talking, and you just heard the conversation telling how impressed he was with Kobe. Kobe was probably about 2/3 of the way through his career, and how much he liked him and loved his game, and talked about a couple things. And Kobe said to him, "I read that in your book. I learned that in your book." And then Bill Russell said to him, I have such ultimate respect for you. I think of you sort of like a son to me. And they hugged and they embraced. It was just a really touchy moment. It just showed the class of Bill Russell, what a great guy he was.
No doubt. And, you always hear about guys being there, and they laid the path for those after them. Bill Russell not only laid the path, he kept working on the path, through the years. And if the path got broken, he was still there to help the NBA and help as the figure that he was, to make people remember where they came from, to help people remember who laid that path for them in the past. And he would still be around the game. He'd still be around the finals. He'd still hand out awards, and just walks in a room and is a larger than life figure. And because all of these younger players looked up to him and idolized him. And, he never took that for granted. And he was always willing to help and have conversations with the Kobes of the world and other players to offer guidance and offer his help and advice. And I mean, my goodness, to get advice from a guy like Bill Russell,
No.
it doesn't get much better than that. And to just have him around and him have that attitude of not just paving the way, but helping and guiding the players of today to continue to pave that way, I think was quite remarkable.
You talked about for the last 15 years, you've been the host of Grizzlies Live and, the sideline reporter for the team. You've met and talked to some really incredible people and athletes over that time and in your whole career, like you just talked about a little while ago, Pete Rose and, Jay Glazer and Sean Salisbury and all those people, Phil Esposito. What has this whole experience been like for you?
Wow. It's been living a dream. When I was a kid and growing up in St. Louis, if you grew up in St. Louis and you wanted to be in the business that I'm in, there were two people that stood out. If you're my age, Dan Kelly, longtime voice of the St. Louis Blues, one of the great hockey announcers of all time, Hall of Famer. And then Jack Buck, longtime voice of the Cardinals, Hall of Famer himself, one of the greats of all time in any sport. That's who you emulated. That's who you wanted to be. That's who you idolized, and that's who you grew up, just imitating. And that first game that I got to do an opportunity to do a professional roller hockey game. It was in the St. Louis Arena where the Blues used to play, where Dan Kelly used to do the games. And there's an old picture of Dan Kelly sitting up in the broadcast booth with this little black and white TV in front of him in the arena, looking down over the arena, and the pictures from behind him. My first game that I took, I stood in that exact same spot. I looked at that TV and I looked out over the arena, and it was so surreal to me. And I quickly had someone take a picture of that moment. And it was something that, I've never taken it for granted. And I've never taken it for granted, the people I've been able to meet and the people that I've been able to interview through the years. And my thing has always been, just show them respect and show them, you can't interview people and be, jaw dropped and,
right.
Like Chris Farley used to be,
Right.
you have to be professional. And it was hard for me because I collected autographs up until the age of 19, until I started working in radio. I collected autographs. You see some of them in the wall behind me, collected autographs of athletes. And in some of the athletes that I ended up covering, just a year later, I would be covering them in the locker room. But I made the transition quickly to being professional, but I've always enjoyed it. I've always felt like I'm living the dream. There isn't a night going by when I'm sitting at our location, pregame when we're on the road, especially when we're on the road, and we'll be sitting at Madison Square Garden, and I'll be sitting in the stool. There's not a game that goes by where I don't sit there and think, wow, this is pretty cool. I am sitting on, it doesn't matter what arena we're in, that I'm sitting here on the floor and I'm a part of it, because there are only 30 people who have this job, right, and I'm one of them. And so it's something I cherish every day. I'm living out a dream. And there are times when I pinch myself. Brevin Knight is a dear friend of mine. And I still, at times, I'll be sitting with Brevin Knight. I'm like, this is Brevin Knight. He played at Stanford. He was in the NCAA tournament, hitting big shots, and had a long career in the NBA. And I hated him in the NBA because he was just a little pest, except when he was on the Grizzlies. And
right.
And now here I am, and one of his good friends. And it's fun to get to know these guys as human beings. and just, kind of respect what they did in their careers, but to know them as people. Brevin's such a classy person. Zach Randolph is one of my favorite people I've ever covered. I mean, you talk about a big teddy bear that just, the thing that I always love about Zach is the first thing out of his mouth every time I see him is he'll ask about my kids. And then we'll talk about our kids for a while. Mike Conley, the same thing. Mike Conley's second favorite person I've ever covered. My favorite person I ever covered was Kurt Warner, because it was such a ridiculous story of where he came from,
Right.
and what he accomplished. And Kurt, when I lived in St. Louis, we were friends, and he and his wife and I were friends as well. And I went out to dinner with them and took part in their charity events and things like that. And there's so many times where I look back and I have all these pictures on my wall, and I'm like, wow, I used to hang out with Kurt Warner all the time. This guy's in the Hall of Fame, and but to meet them as human beings and to be a part of it is great. I always wanted to be a professional athlete, but I wanted to be a broadcaster because being a professional athlete, the odds aren't very good. Right. And I found out quickly in college that wasn't going to be my path. I wasn't going to be a professional athlete. So I went the route of being a broadcaster. And, I miss putting on the uniform. I miss being in the locker room. I miss being on the bus, but I get that taste of it every bus ride that we have. And I'm sitting there with Brevin Knight, and we're just talking about life, or talking about basketball, or talking about the team, or talking about why the team sucks, or why the team's doing great, or whatever. I mean, and Brevin misses that locker room from being a pro athlete. So the bus is kind of like our locker room. So we get to live that every day. So to be a part of a team, to be around the team, and to be broadcasting, I mean, it's what I wanted to do from the moment I was a kid, and to be doing it today at the age of 50 is, it's a blessing. I'm blessed every day.
You just mentioned a couple of minutes ago about, Zach Randolph asking, about your family and everything. I talked to John Roser the other day on the podcast, and he said, Zach, basically the same way to him. He asked him, hey, how's your mom doing? He was just a genuine, and he said the same word, teddy bear, and just a genuine guy. And, when you talked about when Brevin played, you didn't like him and everything, but now you're with him, you do. It reminds me of Mario Chalmers. Yeah. Mario Chalmers, obviously the city, and we know why, hated him. I mean, he didn't do anything to Memphis, but we hated him, and he got here and he played his heart out and he hit a couple of big shots, and all of a sudden the city embraced him. The city does that, doesn't it?
Oh, no doubt about it. Steven Adams, another example, the way they embraced him last year as well. And, there are so many guys in sports that if they're against you, you don't like them. If they're for you, they're your favorite. Right. And so many guys like that make you laugh. And it's what's great about sports. And it is what's great about Memphis, because, these guys come in, and you said about Mario Chalmers, he played hard. Right. And that was the main thing. You play hard in Memphis. You play hard and you put that effort out there. You can be a fan favorite in Memphis, and you'll be embraced in Memphis. And in fact, I look at Memphis and I look at the Grizzlies, and I think it's remarkable, because people always talk about not being able to get free agents, or not being able to make the big deals, small market, all these things, blah, blah, blah. There hasn't been, I think you'd have to go back to James Posey, if I recall correctly, the number of guys who have left the Grizzlies, who the Grizzlies wanted to keep. There aren't many. Right. I mean, look at the biggest players in franchise history. They all resigned. They all stayed. And people who are concerned about John Morant and what's going to happen when his contract's over, they need to remember that. Zach Randolph could have gone somewhere and cashed in. Marc Gasol could have gone somewhere and cashed in. He was one of the biggest free agents on the market when he was a free agent. Right. Mike Conley could have gone somewhere else and cashed in, but they stayed because there's something different about being here. There's something family-like about being here. It's different than anywhere else. It truly is different. It's a community thing. It's a city pride thing. It's a blue-collar thing. Right. There are so many things you can attach to it, but it is a thing that the Memphis Grizzlies don't lose players, because players are embraced. And I think players fall in love with being here.
Some of the things that I realize about the team is that, people do say a lot, oh yeah, we're not going to get the players so they didn't have no shot at a championship. Well, we're pretty close right now, don't you think?
It's pretty amazing. Last year as the Grizzlies went through the season and they were the number 2 seed in the Western Conference, people kept asking me, would you use the word contender to describe the Grizzlies? And I kept saying no. And I was like, it's hard to just overnight become a contender. You got to go through that grind. You got to go through that experience of postseason and what it takes mentally, what it takes physically. You got to have that experience. You got to have scar tissue. And the Grizzlies really didn't have much other than one playoff series against Utah Jazz. So I had trouble putting that word contender on until the season kept going on and on and on, and the sample size just got too big that you had to put them in that group of contender. But the one thing that I would always say, while I didn't think the Grizzlies were contenders, although they played themselves into being contenders last year, if you would have asked me the same question, but just said in the next 5 years, are the Grizzlies championship contenders? My answer is easy. Absolutely. 100%. I mean, it's a window that is wide open right now for this team, and what they showed last year, and then what you expect and how you expect them to improve again individually and as a collective makes you think, yeah, they are contenders. They can contend for a championship. And frankly, last year they gave Golden State probably their toughest test in all the postseason. So who's to say that they couldn't contend for a championship this year? I think this is a team that will contend. It's amazing to think when you look at the odds that they are one of the favorites for the NBA title, and they will be for the next handful of years. And that's exciting. That's thrilling. I mean, to think that we have that player that you need to win a championship, and to think of the possibility of having that happen in Memphis is just, it's mind-blowing, but it is reality right now. That is where this team is. That is an expectation, I think, over the next handful of years to win a championship. We've never had that before.
You mentioned Jack Buck just a few minutes ago, and, the voices that I remember from a kid, the older voices were Jack Buck, Harry Carey, and then, of course, Vin Scully. And you said that Vin Scully was the greatest storytelling broadcaster you've ever heard, and the list of big games he had were just big moments are unmatched, and he's one of the best ever. Wasn't he one of the best ever?
Absolutely. I think, and it was funny, watching the Field of Dreams baseball game with the Reds and the Cubs. And earlier that day, I had watched the movie again. It was on, and I watched Field of Dreams. And it's one of my, being a baseball guy, I played baseball in college. I've loved baseball. It was my sport growing up, and it's, I have an affinity for it. And so Field of Dreams is one of my favorite movies. And to watch that game, I think is really cool that Major League Baseball does that. And I thought about it, and I thought Vin Scully was kind of the human Field of Dreams. Because when I think of Field of Dreams, I think of the James Earl Jones, Terrence Mann speech. The baseball has stood the test of time, and one constant in life has been baseball. And that speech where he's on the field, and I think of the other lines throughout the movie, and that just reminds me of Vin Scully. I mean, you'd watch a game that Vin Scully's doing, and Vin Scully would tell a story. And the game didn't distract his story.
Right.
He'd stop in the middle of a sentence. He'd be like, and then, Joe Robinson went on to their strike 2. Joe Robinson went on, and he just continued right back into the story. And he was an amazing storyteller, but he was a story. It wasn't a boring story. It was always an informative story. It was most of the time an entertaining story. And he had a story on everything because he lived everything. I mean, the guy lived baseball for over 60 years, broadcasting for a team and doing national games and doing the best games. He had the voice. He had the smile, was always on. He was just, when I just hear his voice, the word that always comes to mind is just pleasant. He's just a pleasant person, and just made you feel good and made you feel happy watching baseball. I loved the opportunity to watch Vin Scully on television in the last few years of him working by having the baseball package and watching Dodgers games. And I had a friend who worked for the Dodgers, and so we always would watch the Dodgers and talk about them, and he'd tell me stories about Vin Scully. And Vin Scully and Jack Buck are very similar. And it's amazing when you hear the Vin Scully highlights of some of his great calls of all time, like the catch for Dwight Clark in San Francisco, the Kirk Gibson home run. Well, Jack Buck had those calls too. He did the television when Vin Scully did the radio, or vice versa. And it's like the parallels between those two are amazing. And I think they're, to me, and I'm biased growing up in St. Louis, I think Jack's the greatest to ever do it. But I'd put those two at the top. I mean, Vin Scully and Jack Buck, I think, are the two greatest to ever do it. And Vin's storytelling ability is great. My favorite thing, and look this up when you get the opportunity. Okay. If you Google Vin Scully grocery list, it's Vin Scully reading a grocery list. And it's one of the most hysterical things you'll hear. Just him reading off someone's grocery list. Yeah. So check that out on Google.
Okay. What I remember most about him, when I was young in 1988, Kirk Gibson, game one, Dodgers, A's, World Series, Eckersley's on the mound, Gibson's hurt. I mean, it was just a perfect setup just to be that moment. And I remember, him hobbling, you saw him walking to the plate and you're thinking,
yep,
I got to hit. I mean, I think Lasorda was like, what do I do here? And he finally decided, all right, let's do it. We got to put him in. We're losing. And then that moment, and then him running around the bases and Vin Scully's call and stuff. I mean, that was just such an unbelievable. I remember just talking about it now, I still get chills. And it's been 34 years. Yeah,
the impossible has happened. Is what he said. Jack Buck said, "I don't believe what I just saw."
Right.
But the best, Scully, Buck, the best are put in those best moments. I mean, that Hank Aaron call is one of the greatest calls of all time for any call of any play. And again, it was because of the storytelling in the call. Him talking about a black man in the deep South being hailed as a home run champion at the time. I mean, for him to even say it was bold, but he told the story and he painted the story beautifully that encapsulated the whole moment of him, Hank Aaron, becoming the home run king, the sexiest record in all of sports at the time. And for him to do it there in Atlanta, and for Vin Scully to be on the call, it was a perfect call. I mean, the best are usually put in those positions because they're the best. And when those moments hit, they're incredible. I mean, you got some with every broadcaster that you can think of right off the top of your head, especially the best. And Vin Scully and Jack Buck, you can come up with many right off the top of your head that they were able to call and had memorable calls doing it as well. I mean, that's how good they were. When the moment rose, so did they. And Vin Scully certainly did every chance he had.
And Harry Carey was more of your high-strung guy. He was loud and boisterous. Scully and Buck were not. They were more soft-spoken, but they were never boring. I mean, you paid attention.
No, and because they paid attention. Right. I mean, they were telling the story in front of what they saw and painting a picture for you. And that's what they did. And Vin was the greatest at it. One of the great compliments any broadcaster can ever have is when someone who doesn't have sight will tell you how much they appreciate you because you paint a picture. It's one of the greatest things you'll ever hear. Vin Scully did that for everybody. Even when you had sight, Vin Scully made it clearer, and Vin Scully made it brighter. And he was incredible. He just had a knack for being able to do it and felt like he was just sitting in the living room next to you. Remarkable.
So it's April 4th, 2009. The Grizzlies are in Milwaukee to play the Bucks. You're out walking around with Eric Hasseltine. Everybody knows the radio voice of the Grizzlies, and you pass by a clothing store called Ed's Men of Fashion. Tell the audience how that moment sort of changed your life and your wardrobe career.
Well, we were a bad basketball team at the time, and we walked by Ed's Men of Fashion, and they had this baby blue jacket in the window, and on the back of the jacket was like an embroidered sun in baby blue. It was like baby blue on baby blue. And I thought, wow, that'd really go good with our uniforms. I think I should get that jacket. And I had a Navy suit packed, and I thought, well, it'll go great with the Navy pants. I can just get this jacket. And maybe figure out a different tie that'll go, and I'll be good to go. But this jacket looks really cool. So we walked in, and I picked up the jacket, and as we're walking to check out, I saw these baby blue shoes that matched it perfectly. And I thought, well, what about these? And Eric told me that I was crazy. He said, you can't pull that off. No way. Don't do it. And I was like, I'm going to do it. I'm going to do it. What else do we have? What are we playing for, really? We're running out. It's the beginning of April. We got 2 weeks left in the season.
Right.
And I bought the shoes and showed up at the arena with the baby blue shoes and the baby blue jacket. And the looks that I got from the dance team, they were warming up prior to the game, and I walked in front of them, and they all turned their heads like, what is this guy doing? The looks in the comments I got from fans, the looks in the comments I got from security, from other media members. I mean, it was unbelievable how people responded to the look. And so then I just decided that was going to be my thing. The shoes were going to be my thing. And occasionally I'll throw in a jacket that pops a little bit more than others, and a tie that might pop a little bit more than others. But the shoes are my thing, where I'll match my shoes to my tie or my suit or every single night. And I have over 60 pair of dress shoes that all different colors. And it kind of became my thing. And it's amazing how big of a thing it has become. Every arena that we walk into, and again, this goes back to what we were talking about earlier. Every time we go to Atlanta, when my second favorite player of all time, Dominique Wilkins, when he comes over and shakes my hand and says, I've been waiting for you because I want to see what you were wearing, and then he gives me a hug, and I'm like, this is Dominique Wilkins. This is crazy. Those are cool moments, and so it's kind of become what I've been known for, I guess. And I tell people it's because I'm getting up there in age. I want to take the focus as far away from the face as possible, so you can look at my shoes and not realize how old I'm getting. And hopefully the shoes will keep me around for a long time. But it is amazing. I can wear navy shoes or baby blue shoes, and people say, "Wow, you went pretty boring tonight." It's tough to top myself night in and night out with the shoe selection.
And you've developed a pretty special relationship with the Clyde, Frazier up in New York because of your wardrobe too, right?
Yeah, and he's a guy that he's been rocking a I don't like to call it bizarre or weird or different. I like to call it we're peacocking. We like to peacock. And Clyde Frazier's done it for so many years. I mean, even when he played, he was the coolest dude on earth. And so he's been doing it for a long, long time. And so anytime we go to New York or New York comes to Memphis, I always try to wear something special peacocky for Clyde, and always get to share a moment with him pregame and talk with him. And, those are moments that, that's my locker room. That's what I enjoy the most, or seeing those people and getting to share minutes with them, just talking about things, and not necessarily always basketball, but having that bond with those guys is always fun. And it's fun to have a bond with Clyde because he always looks good.
You had your own radio show for about 17 years here on Sports 56, Fish and Stats. It was a remarkable show. I had you out, obviously, at my old store, Sleepy Z's, a few times doing, live remotes out there. Mm-hmm. Do you miss doing radio?
No, actually, I don't. I did it for, you mentioned 17 years here. I did it for another 11, so about 28 years. I did sports radio, and I loved doing it. I thought I was good at it. I tried to have fun every day. That was always my goal. But like I said, I do 3 podcasts now, and I do one called The Odds Couple on Grind City Media, which is mainly during football season. It's about handicapping football. I do Infield Fly, a baseball podcast. It comes out every week. I do another one called Night Court. It's Brevin, Knight, and I just talking basketball, talking other things, and just talking life in general. That usually comes out every week, except during the summer when we tend to take a lot of time off, right. Which we have here recently between episodes. So those podcasts give me an opportunity to still kind of speak. And, I fill in for Chris Vernon on his show a few times throughout the year whenever he needs days off or goes on vacation. I'll fill in there. So I still get my fill of it. I still get my taste of it. And I still enjoy doing it, I can't believe doing the basketball for 6 months a year that I was able to do both. Because it's such a grind doing the basketball schedule and the travel and the preparation for that. To do a 3-hour radio show every day, I truly, I don't know how I did it. Because I seem to be short on time now, just doing basketball and not doing the radio. So it surprises me that I was able to do both, but I think it's made my basketball work better. And it's, it's given me some time to be with the family, where I'm not just, constantly on the move and constantly working. I get my summers really with the family a lot, and able to do a lot of things with my wife, and hang out with the kids, because I miss a lot of their school stuff being gone during basketball. So to spend a lot of time in the summer with them has been great. So I haven't regretted it. I haven't missed it. I mean, there are days when there's that big story that you just want to jump on a radio and you want to, I feel like I want to call in sometimes and give my opinion, because I'm like, people need to know my opinion.
Right.
So, I mean, there are moments where you're like, oh boy, today would have been a great day to do a show, but miss it. I wouldn't say I miss it. It was an amazing run, long run. And, I enjoyed it while I did it, for sure.
You've covered so many sporting events in your career, I think, from the Kentucky Derby to the Super Bowl, the Breeders' Cup, the Indy 500, the Final Four, even the Summer Olympics. Did you ever imagine when you first started in the early 90s that you would have all those things on your resume?
No. I hoped I could go to some games,
Yeah.
and when I got my first press pass to cover a Notre Dame game, it was Notre Dame football game. That was awesome. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. I'm at Soldier Field in Chicago with this press pass that has my name on it, covering a Notre Dame football game. And that was pretty neat. And then to get a pass to go to, the ballpark, and I have a pass right now that I can just walk into FedEx Forum. I mean, to have that sort of ability, that's really cool. But the events were awesome. There have been 55 Super Bowls and I've been to 10. Which is, it blows my mind to think that I went to that many. And it was, those were always fun. Those are just kind of perks of the job, the traveling and the covering things. The Kentucky Derby, I kind of did on my own, but did cover it. And that was a blast and a great experience. I love experiencing things in sports that I wouldn't be able to experience without this job. I've gotten to experience Madison Square Garden and Wrigley Field, and Montreal Forum when the Forum was still open, and some of the great, cathedrals of sports, and Churchill Downs for the Kentucky Derby, and the pageantry of a Super Bowl. Just all of those things. It's such a different experience every time you go, that those are experiences that, you'll remember the rest of your life, and just to be able to do them and say you were able to do them. It gives you credibility, number one, but number two, they were just so enjoyable to do. I mean, I went to 5 Indy 500s. I'm not even a race car fan. I'm not. But I had the opportunity to go, and I went, and I had a good time, and we ended up going back 5 times. I don't know if I need to go back and do it again, right. but to have that experience was great. And really, at my age now, it's funny because people ask me if I want to go to games all the time, and I'm like, kind of had my fill. I've gone to so many. I now, during basketball especially, I don't really feel like doing too much else because it takes up so much time, and I'm going to games every night.
Right.
But even in the off season, it's like I kind of enjoy sitting at home watching it on TV because I've done it and I've been there. So it takes a little bit more for me to go to games these days than maybe it used to.
You mentioned earlier when we first started during COVID, you guys had to make a lot of adjustments. The team obviously did, and the television and radio crews did too. And, first you ended up having to step in and do radio play-by-play for Eric Hasseltine, on a game in Sacramento. And then following that, you had to replace Brevin Knight, as a TV analyst. Then the trifecta happens, and you're having to take the place of Pete Pranica to do the television play-by-play for a game against the Nets. And before the game, Joe Buck sent you a tweet, which is actually a really funny tweet that I saw. And for people that don't know Joe Buck, obviously he's a longtime TV broadcaster, play-by-play announcer. He's now getting ready to, work for ESPN. Him and Troy Aikman are going to be calling Monday Night Football. His tweet said, "Go get them tonight. It'll be great. Have fun and be you. Remember, if they make one from beyond the arc, it counts as 3." That's pretty funny. Tell us a little bit about how you were able to improvise and adapt so well, and because you seem to not even miss a beat when I was watching you.
I've always dreamed of doing play-by-play. I've done play-by-play in the past. I in St. Louis, I did a lot of Missouri Valley Conference tournament games. We've done, at Sports 56, we used to do the Conference USA tournament game. So any chance I got to do play-by-play, I would do it. I learned early in my career to have a career at play-by-play. I mean, I was progressing through media and progressing as a sports radio guy. And if you want to dedicate yourself to play-by-play, you almost have to take a step backwards and really start over. Because you have to, get all the experience you can. You have to go through the minor leagues. You have to go through high school games. You have to go through every game you can possibly do. And then you got to catch a break. And then the right person has to hear you. It's a lot about luck and being in the right spot at the right time. And, to me, I love doing sports radio that, I thought this is kind of what I'm going to do the rest of my career, and I'm okay with it, and I love it. The play-by-play thing, I had some opportunities. I've gotten to do it, and I enjoyed doing it, but this is where my career is. But then last year, to be able to do it, it was, when that first game I had to do was a radio game, and I found out that morning. That one freaked me out because all day, instead of preparing for the game, all I could think about all day was, oh my God, I'm doing an NBA game, doing play-by-play. This is unbelievable. So it was a true shock. So that first one, I don't think it was rocky. I thought it was pretty good, but I hadn't done it in years. And I was just still on such a high of, I can't believe I'm having to do this. Right. The second game I settled in and was fine. Then I had to fill in for Brevin. When I had to fill in for Brevin, I was miserable. I was terrified because I'm thinking, okay, Brevin's basketball experience being an analyst was, 13 years in the NBA, right. And a college career. I got cut as a freshman in high school. That's my basketball career. So trying to fill his shoes and I didn't even try to be as good as Brevin. I just tried to have fun with Pete and just have conversation with Pete and get through the night where people didn't miss Brevin too much and want me out. That was my goal. Just kind of make everybody just kind of pass over this game and fill the seat until Brevin gets back. And then when I got to do TV play-by-play, our stage manager, she came up to me, Corey Harlan, and Corey Ventura Harlan, and she came up and she said, "Are you okay? You're going to be great. Don't be nervous." And I looked at her and I said, "Let me tell you something. I got this. I am ready. I am fired up for this." And I had such a good time. I have such a good time doing play-by-play. It was a blast. So it wasn't hard to adjust for me. And every night, I got an earpiece in and I'm listening to Pete and Brevin. So I've listened to two great ones do it every single night. So, I've had a nice guide along the way with them. So it wasn't a hard transition. And, we're like family, and we treat each other like family. We're around each other as much as a family. For 6 months, they are my family. We spend holidays together, and when one guy goes down, you want to fill in and you want to make the other guy proud. So I was able to do that. And it goes back to what I said earlier, be prepared for anything and have experience at everything. And having that experience in the past, even though it had been a while ago, really allowed me to make the transition seamless.
Speaking of making somebody proud, after the game that you called for Pete, longtime Grizzlies television play-by-play announcer Don Poyer's wife, Barbara, sent you a text that said you reminded her of a young Don. I know that had to be really special for you.
It was. There were two big moments that night. The Joe Buck tweet was great, just idolizing Jack, growing up and getting to know Joe in St. Louis. And for someone of that stature to take the minute out to tweet that meant a lot to me. And then, Don, I didn't know Don long, obviously, unfortunately. But the time that I did know him, I consider him a mentor. I consider him a guy who gave me a lot of guidance when I first moved to Memphis about, I had talked to him about doing play-by-play, and we had talked a long time about the possibility of ever working together. And we became close and we became good friends. And, when he passed away, I remain friends to this day with his widow, Barb. And, and I miss him. I miss him dearly. It's something that, every game, every home game, I look up and I see the banner with Don Poyer up there and don't think of him every single game. And, so I miss him. I miss him a lot. And when I got the chance to do play-by-play and be the TV voice of the Memphis Grizzlies, an NBA team, and I did the game, and to hear her, and she texted me and said that I sounded like a young Don, and said Don would have been proud. And then she gave me a couple of pointers, because that's what she used to do to Don. You didn't get off easy. You weren't great. You weren't perfect. She had to give me a couple of pointers. It made me cry. I mean, it was a true moment where, a guy that I really looked up to, and I considered a friend, and I considered great at what he did, to have his wife, who I know was so close to him and what he did as well, and appreciated what he did, for her to reach out to me meant the world to me. And it was, it kind of validated for me that, yeah, I can do this. And I was able to do it without a flaw. And that was reassuring when I got that from her. And I did 4 games and or 5 games play-by-play, and she texted me after every single one of them. And it was a neat experience to hear from her.
My first podcast a couple months ago was with Eric, and he was talking about Barb, and he said that, when that ceremony, that night that they were honoring Don, Eric says he just was not into it and everything. And Barb actually came up to him and tapped him on the shoulder and says, "Hey, no, none of that. You got to step up. You got to, be the guy. And this is what Don would expect of you." And she must be a pretty special lady.
Yes, she is. And, I mean, she was as part of the Grizzlies family as Don was. I mean, they were always together. When she wasn't on the road, she was watching on television. And so she would critique Don. She would expect the best from him every single night. So she was his harshest critic. And she always, in an amazing way, even after Don passed, and all these years since he's passed, how close she still is with all the broadcasters, and how close she is, not just with the guys who are on camera or behind the mic, but the guys who are in the truck, and, the guys who are behind the camera, the guys who, are the producers. I mean, she knows everybody, and she takes the time to care for them, because she cares about the team and she cares about the product, and she knows that Don would care. And she carries that on, and she's a remarkable person, and we all love her, and she's definitely part of the Grizzlies family, and she will always be.
And you talk about family with you guys, with Brevin, with Pete, with Chris, that you're really close. You spend a ton of time together. You've said before, there are no egos with us. What makes that relationship with you guys so special? We're
lucky. It's just the right combination of people. We from day one, everybody's kind of known their role, and everybody stays in their lane, and nobody's looking for someone else's job. And we, most of the broadcast groups around the country are much bigger than ours, where there's a studio show and then there's a broadcast team. And a lot of times they don't get along, and there are egos or money's involved, and there are disagreements there. With ours, it's not. I mean, it's just us. There are 7 of us who travel. That's it. Just 7 of us. And we do every game, home game, road game. And it's the smallest group in the league. And so we rely on each other a lot. If one guy's having a down day, or, if one guy needs to be picked up, well, the other guy's got him. And because we know that we have to rely on each other to put out a good product, and all of us strive to do that night in and night out, that we're willing to work together and make it happen together. And we've always been that way. And, now Brevin and I and Pete together have been together, I think 12 years, maybe going on to 13 now. So we've done it a long time, and we have friendships with each other away from the basketball court, and we've grown into a big family, and we've had the continuity. We talked about basketball teams earlier, continuity. Well, we have it with the broadcasting, and I think it shows. I think it shows with the fun that we have with each other, the way that we speak with each other, the way that we can finish each other's sentences. I mean, we're a close-knit group, and I think it shows on television, and I think that's great for the product.
Your wife, Dipti, just celebrated her birthday the last few days, and you said, quote, "Happy birthday to my better half, a perfect wife, mother, and friend. Have the greatest of days, Mama." Tell us a little bit about her and how you guys met.
We met. She used to go to Grizzlies games, and then she'd go out with her friends to bars. And Eric Halstein and I, we'd go out with our friends to bars. And we knew them from that group that she was in. We knew them from going to Grizzlies games, and we started dating, and kept dating and dating and dating and dating, and then we eventually got married 10 years ago. So we've been together 10 years, and we got a 10-year-old, and we got a 8-year-old, or a 7-year-old, a 10-year-old and a 7-year-old, 10-year-old girl, Keegan, and 7-year-old boy, Colton. And she's from India. And then she grew up in her early years in Toronto. And then she grew up as a young child in Virginia. Then she moved to Memphis for school. For nursing school, and she's been in Memphis ever since. So we've been together, I guess, about 15 years, and married 10. And she's an amazing woman. She was a nurse for a long time. She's now a retired nurse who is at home with the kids and working on all our outdoor projects that we work on. And but she's still going to school and plans on going back to work in some capacity in the medical field. And she's getting every degree you can possibly get, so she can basically choose what she wants to do in that field. And it's been great to see her do that, and to have that drive and that sort of desire. And when she gets back to work, maybe that's when I'll take some time off and stay home with the kids.
It takes a lot to open up and be fully transparent when you're having struggles. And you did that about a year and a half ago when you opened up about depression and suicide. And you said it started for you back in Christmas of 2014 when you were back in St. Louis. You said, quote, "I couldn't get my hair right." Something that simple, just couldn't get my hair to lay right. And I got so frustrated. I was yelling at myself in the mirror. I was cursing myself. I was pulling my hair out. And finally, I turned around and I punched a hole in my mother's bathroom wall. Tell us about that day, if you can remember it, and what was going through your mind.
I remember it vividly. Everything you just said was happening. And there were moments when I would have anger, or moments where I felt down, and I always thought it was because I was a competitor, which sounds weird. But when I couldn't win at what I was doing, whether it was making my hair right, or holding the bar of soap in the shower, and it, you're washing yourself, and all of a sudden you drop that bar of soap, and I'd get over the top upset about it. And there were a lot of times when my mother said, "You need to talk to somebody. You need to talk to somebody." And I would always just brush her off and, "Whatever, Mom, whatever." And then that night happened. And when I punched the hole in the wall, I knew I wasn't going to be able to hide that. And, so that was scary. And it was a moment that at that point in time that I knew I needed help, and I knew it was a much bigger problem than what I had even envisioned. And that night I drove over to my aunt's house for Christmas, and I told my mom that to call me when she left. And when she left, she called, and I just told her I needed help. And the first thing she said was, "I know." And because a mother knows. And, I started getting help then. and realized that it was a much bigger problem than just me being competitive. It was something deeper than that. And through the years, it grew and became even deeper at times. And there have been a lot of times of struggle. But there have been a lot of ever since that article came out, it's been an unbelievable, overwhelming response. That's just it's been so positive.
And a lot of people, and I've suffered with depression on and off my, from my teenage years on, and a lot of people, just say, "Hey, suck it up, snap
Right.
out of it." That doesn't work.
No, and that was the question. The thing that really came out when I first discussed it with a friend of mine. He said, "What a lot of people think. What do you have to be depressed about?
Right.
You got an amazing wife. You got your dream job. I mean, everything we've talked about this whole talk, Michael. I love what I do. I love my family. I got a great family. I mean, what do I have to be depressed about? Well, having depression isn't being depressed. It's having depression. You don't control it, and it's hard to explain to people because you don't really understand unless you're talking to someone who goes through it.
Yeah.
And for those of us who do go through it, it's difficult to talk to people, and that's why I talked about it with Jeff Calkins, and the story came out because I just wanted people to know that they're not alone. And I knew it would help people. I knew it would be a big response, and it was. And the response I got from people, it certainly helped a lot of people. But I didn't realize how much it was going to help me, and help me actually realize what my own message was, is that I'm not alone. And so it's done wonders for me. And not that was the idea to do it, but it's been incredible how much it's affected me, much more so than I ever thought.
A few years ago, after I had a couple pulmonary embolisms in my lungs in October of 2018, after that, it was just a downward spiral for a few years. And the depression was so bad that I had suicidal thoughts, so much so that I had pills next to me a few times. And the only thing that kept me from doing it, well, two things. One is I'm looking around the room and I have three little miniature schnauzers that are my kids. And I'm thinking, I owe it to them to be there all the way till the end. I've had them, at that time, 9 years. Secondly, I knew that I would put my mom in the grave if I did it. You had those thoughts. You talked about it, how you came close where you talked about, planning it. You were trying to figure out, is my wife going to be able to get the insurance money, or my kids can't find me. I mean, you got close, but you were getting help at the time. And it takes a while. I mean, it's just not something where you just take a pill. There's no magic pill, with depression. It can help, but, ultimately you have to figure out a way to save yourself, don't you?
Yeah. I mean, you got to fight. You can sit here and say, well, think of happy thoughts. Well, yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Right.
It's a fight. It's a struggle. And I would say if you have it, you need to talk to somebody. It's the only thing that helps, is talking about it, because the more that you keep it in, the more that it bundles up, and the more that it can become deadly, frankly. It's about talking to someone. It's about talking to someone who understands, because you could talk to family and they won't understand. You could talk to friends, they won't understand. You need to talk to someone who does understand, whether it's a doctor or it's someone who also suffers. That's who you need to talk to, because they will understand. And because it's hard to communicate what you're going through, and someone to listen to you and think, oh, that makes sense. But a doctor can, or someone who goes through it can. And so you have to find those people. And I've always, ever since I came out with the story, I've opened my door on Twitter and on Instagram or wherever, to reach out to me, because, the whole
Awesome.
point is we're not alone. And I think so many people have come up to me and have thanked me for that. That it's it's been great, and I'm glad that I had wanted to do it for about 5 years, and I'm glad I finally did it and was able to use my platform for something really good. And I think it's helped a lot of people realize that they're not alone.
You've talked about that you and Dipti have your two children. You have, Keegan, your daughter, she's 10, and Colton, I think you guys call him Coco, is 7. And, Keegan's, I think she's been involved over time in basketball and soccer and ballet. And, And you said Coco is known for, smiling and singing while he's on his way to school. And y'all had him tested when he was, 2 years old, because you felt that there were some things that, just weren't 100% right. And you found out he was autistic. And you said, quote, "He is a loving kid. He is a sweet kid. He's a smart kid. He's a normal kid." Tell us a little bit about your kids.
Well, Keegan's my daughter. She's 10. She's amazing. And she's been just a bundle of joy. She's an amazing big sister. She's a sweet child. I mean, she drives us nuts, but but the way that other people talk about her and the way that she acts around other people make us so proud that she's just a really good girl. And then she's such an amazing big sister to her little brother. And when we found out that Colton had autism, yeah, it was a very difficult time, because you don't know what to expect. You don't know what's going to happen when he grows up. You don't know if he'll be able to live out his dreams. You don't know how much he's going to depend on you throughout his life. You just don't know those things. So it's scary. It's scary when it happens. But we were lucky, and we were smart. And my wife, I give her all the credit in the world. We had early intervention. We found out at an early age. We were able to get him the right treatment. We were able to get him the right doctors. We were able to get him the right therapies, and we were able to get in those places. And unfortunately, there are a lot of people who have children with autism who can't. We had the resources. There are a lot of people who don't have the resources, and that's very unfortunate, because a lot of times autistic children, their therapies aren't covered by insurance, and it can be very expensive as well. So it's something that we've talked about, and we have fought, but the effort that we put in for him, getting all the help that he could get, the effort that my wife put in for him getting the best therapists and doctors and things throughout the years, that early intervention made all the difference in the world. And he's at Holy Rosary School, and they have a great program, an angel program for children who are on the spectrum, and what they've done for him. It's incredible to see where he's at now compared to where he was just a few years ago, when he didn't want to talk to people. He wasn't social. And now to see how social he is it's incredible to see the leaps and bounds that he's made through these last few years. And it's all a credit to the doctors, and a credit to the teachers that he has. And he's a typical little boy. And there's still things that are different, that you're reminded of at times. But it's amazing how much he's grown, and how much of a young man he's become. And it goes to all the help that he's gotten.
Dipty encouraged you to use your platform and your voice to help, educate people on autism. And, you obviously have been doing that. How much is the support from the Grizzlies and your broadcast family meant to you during all this?
Huge. Huge. I mean, them always asking how things are going, and them being involved in my life. And when my son came out with autism, it was right around the same time that my father had gotten cancer and ended up passing away quickly. So it was a rough time in my life. And I had that family, along with my own family, that were there for me, and they were shoulders for me. They were soundboards for me. And then even, last year, when I came out with the story about when I talked to Jeff Calkins about my depression and battling with that, I talked to all of them individually before the story came out, and just to give them a heads up. And, some of them already knew, and some of them didn't. But it was nothing but support, and it was nothing but love. And it's, they've been such a help, because when you're gone that long on the road, I think a lot of people who travel feel alone when they're on the road. We have the luxury of not being alone. Right. And we have that luxury of having family with us at all times. So it's a huge help, both mentally, and emotionally. It's huge to have friends like that with you all the time.
The Memphis Runs for Autism 5K is this Saturday, August 20th, and it's at 8 o'clock at Holy Rosary, where your son goes to school, and it's over on Park Avenue. Tell us a little bit about the event and the money that's raised and what it goes to help with.
It goes to help the teachers at Holy Rosary and that Angel program for children on the spectrum. It helps to raise money for computers and the technology that they need for the students in those classes. It goes to the Angel program and helps, and it's such a great cause. And they do such a great job at the school of having shadows and being able to have children who are on the spectrum and integrate them into typical classrooms. That's what they're able to do. And it's been amazing for my son. I've seen it firsthand, and it's been amazing for so many others. And it's a great day. You come out, there's a 5K run. They have activities for the kids. They have games, they have music, live music. They got free beer. They got free balloons. The Grizzlies are out there handing things out, and they got a lot of prizes, and it's just a party. It's a great time. It's the 20th. It starts at 8 a.m. at Holy Rosary. You can sign up by going to MemphisRunsForAutism.com or HolyRosaryMemphis.org, and you can get there that way as well. You don't have to. You can register now and sign up to run, or even if you just don't know but want to show up on August 20th, you can show up and register there and do it there. It's the 5K run or walk, and great prizes and a great event. It's a great Saturday every year, and looking forward to it.
What are the most important lessons you've learned in your life?
Man, be true to who you are, and don't be scared of it. And just I don't be fake. I try to not be fake ever. I try to be genuine, and I try to be pleasant. And I, not so people like me, but I just think the world would be better off with pleasant people. and that's really the main reason. And I wish there were more people that just would be pleasant people. And that's my biggest lesson, I would say.
How can people find you on social media if they want to follow you?
Yeah, on Twitter at The Fish Nation, at The Fish Nation. Then on Instagram at The Fish Nation _ is how you can get me.
All right, so everybody, don't forget this coming up Saturday, 8 o'clock at Holy Rosary is the Memphis Runs for Autism 5K. He said you can run, you can walk, to go out there and just have a great time and hanging out. Just want to thank Rob Fischer for coming on the podcast today. His iPad just actually cut out, so that's why the screen has changed. He's not on it anymore. But Rob, I really appreciate you coming on. It's been a pleasure talking to you, and I look forward to having you on again down the road and talking to you soon. Thank you very much.